Welcome to this new live stream. In this live stream, we're gonna look at the autopilot functionality of Flight Simulator 2024. In our previous live stream, we watched at how you can create your own, let's say, flight plans, right? Using multiple tools. Either the external tooling from, I would say, Asobo, or you can, I would say, for example, also use the built-in functionality from Asobo, right? That's something which you, I'd say, of course, can use, but it's not mandatory to use. I'm just checking the stream, right? Because everything needs to be, I would say, correct, but I'm not seeing anything. So let me quickly switch on the view. So now you should be able to see everything. So what we're going to do today, again, we're going to watch at the autopilot functionality. And the autopilot functionality is, I would say, kind of, can be, I would say, pretty handy, but also can be pretty complex. So that's something which you need to be aware of. Let's say some of those functionalities are working. Some of those other things are not always working. At least that's what I've figured out while testing this functionality. So keep that in mind. So testing it again because I don't see the screen yet. I think it's a setup error, but that should now be fixed. I'm watching also the live stream and there you should see some, I would say, some OBS screens, right? That's the software I'm using to do the live stream. And now you can see the Flight Simulator 2024 content. So what's the idea? So the idea is that we're gonna look at some of the components. First of all, we're gonna look at the, let's say, basic things. And then we're gonna say do a flight. So let me press free flight and let's locate the aircraft somewhere, right? Let's start pretty simple with the Cessna 172, right? That's what say relatively simple, right? It can still be pretty complex, but we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna place the aircraft, and let's place it. Well, let's do it on this nice island, right? Here we go. We're gonna zoom into this one. And then say zoom to the details because we want to place it on this island, and then we want to put it, let's say, on a spot, right? Let me put it on the ramp medium. That's fine for now. It's a little bit too big, but it's just to explain you how this works. So we're gonna first look at some of the details about the buttons which we have, and then we're gonna load a flight where we're really gonna use the autopilot itself. Would say that makes it, would say, relatively easy, right? And also hopefully a little bit more understandable, because that's of course my goal. My goal is to make sure that you understand how you can use the autopilot in your advantage. Because you might like to fly, I would say, using the default keys, right? Or using the VFR, using your own controls. But I would say in some cases it's a little bit handier if I put on the right one. In some cases might be easier to say simply use the buttons in the autopilot, from the autopilot. So all those buttons, well, I'm seeing the irritating message which everybody gets since the latest update, and all the autopilots for buttons for the Cessna 172 can be found on the left side of the Garmin G1000. That's also applicable for the co-pilot, right? So the co-pilot has the same buttons. And also, besides that, there are some buttons over here, right? Which you can use to, say, for example, change the heading, but also the altitude. And those are relatively important because you need to use them. So first of all, there's the AP button. As the title already says, right, this engages or disengages the autopilot. So simply it turns on or off the autopilot. That's relatively nice and also pretty handy because sometimes you want to switch it off, right? Because you might not want to do the landing completely with the autopilot, but you want to do it, I would say, manually by yourself. So one of the things which I definitely recommend you to do is to assign a shortcut either on your keyboard or on a button, which you can use to, say, disable the autopilot. Then we've got the heading option, and the heading option allows you to fly in a certain heading, and that's where this button comes into play. So this button allows you to change the heading. And if you look very closely, you can see that the heading is changing here, right? So by default, it's now set to 251, and the heading is set to 009, which means if we would now go airborne, switch on the autopilot, it will change the direction to 009, which you can see also here, because it's also marked using the blue marker over here, which is also relatively easy. The good thing about this is that you can also adjust it. So if you're using a mouse to control the heading button, you can press it with the left key and then set it to the right. and then it will set it to the current heading. This is particularly useful if you're departing from an airport or runway and you want to initially use the heading mode, and after that you want to change to a different mode. For example, the nav mode, which is a navigation mode. Now for the navigation mode, there's something which is super important, and that is that this is set to GPS. If that's not the case, then use this button, which is now called CDI, to change those things, right? So let me hide the yoke because it's... Here you can see localizer 1, localizer number 2, and then GPS. Keep in mind that if you press this option and change to a different mode, you will need to reactivate the navigation mode because it will be disabled after that. Enough about, let's say, the direction we're flying, right? Let's talk about the altitude we're flying. And the altitude can be set by using the altitude hold mode. The altitude hold mode will simply hold the altitude. So if I set it to 2000, it will make sure that it will fly continuously at 2000 feet. Now, you can see that currently nothing is configured. So what you can do is use this knob, which contains out of two parts, right? The small one, which is set to the 100 intervals, and the large one to set to 1000 intervals. So let's assume that I want to fly 5000 feet. I can do it like this. So switch to 5000 and then one back. And if I would say now would go airborne, it won't climb because it will what it will do in that case, it will set the altitude, which I would say did fly when pressing this button. However, what you can do to make sure that you're climbing is, I would say, multiple ways. So the first one is the flight level change mode. That's this one. What this will do is it will look at the speed which you're flying, and then it will try to, say, keep that same speed, but then still try to climb to that specific altitude which you configured. The nice thing about this is that if for some reason it, I would say, is not able to catch up with the speed, it will reduce the pitch, right? So it will reduce the climb rate automatically for you, so you don't have to worry that you're becoming into a stall, right? Because it's of course what you want to prevent. Then the next one is the VS, which stands for vertical speed mode. So the vertical speed mode, that's a mode which allows you to configure your climb rate yourself, right? Using this button, the nose up or the nose down, in case of you want to decrease the altitude. So the nose up button is relatively easy, right? Because then you can simply, let's say, configure the feet per minute which you want to climb, and the down button allows you to decrease the altitude, of course, in feet per minute. And I'll press them, so it will be, let's say, very clear in the demo also to see how it works. Then we've got one other option, which is the vertical navigation mode. Well, this one is sometimes also referred to the LNAV, the lateral navigation mode. This one is the vertical navigation mode, which allows you to control the climb rate. So in this case, for example, what you could do is if you want to climb or be at a certain altitude at a certain waypoint, then you can use the vertical navigation mode. However, there's a dependency on your flight plan. So in the flight plan, you will need to configure the altitude which you want to fly, else it won't work. So keep that in mind. If no altitude is being configured, that won't work, and we will also showcase that during the demo. Then there are two buttons left, which is the approach mode and the back course. So the approach mode is to, for example, if I fly to an airport and I want to use the autopilot to, for example, land on the runway, I can use this mode to, I would say, automatically, I would say, guide me using the glide slope, sorry, to, let's say, descend the aircraft, and then we'll land the aircraft even automatically if I don't disengage the autopilot. However, what you do in normal case, you will switch it off and, I would say, then do the landing yourself manually. In some cases, you need to use the back course, and that's if the ILS beacon is on the other end of the runway, if I'm saying it correctly. And in that scenario, you will need to use that, I would say, back course mode. I would say this one is pretty hard to demo, so we're likely going to skip this one. But the other modes, we're all going to use them during our flight in Flight Simulator 2024. Now, if we would go to the right mode, and that's something you will see later on, we will have the same buttons, right? We've got the heading mode or the heading button. We've got the altitude mode, altitude button, sorry, and also the other buttons which you can use here. So that's, let's say, still the same. So nothing to worry on. Makes it easy to fly your autopilot using the Garmin G1000. So depending on the, I would say, navigation system which is in the aircraft, it could be that, I would say, other aircrafts have a different option. However, in general, let's say most of the options are working, let's say likely the same, right? So that's pretty cool. So enough about talked, right? Let's look at how we can do this. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna, I would say, go back to the menu, right? And then we're gonna put the aircraft on a pre-configured flight because I thought, okay, hey, it's easier to show it during the flight, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna load the flight using the electronic flight bag. We're gonna go to the route and then say, okay, hey, I want to load and save a flight plan, load from the PC, and then I've got the this one, which will say bring us from the North Eritrea to Linden Pingling. That's would say somewhere in the say close to the US, but also in the Caribbean. So pretty nice. You can see that I configured an ILS approach for this one, and that's to show you that approach mode, right? So once we've done this, we press the file with ATC, which will make sure that it's in the plan, and then we will send it to the avionics. So now we've done this, we can close this window and we can look at the plan, right? So this is the flight plan, a relatively short flight as you can see, but there are some interesting things in this. So let me, let's say, start the flight and then let's wait for it to load, which should go pretty fast in most cases. And then let's have a look at what we can do. So the aircraft is almost on the runway, right? So we can see, you'd say, it's over here. So let's click ready to fly, then double checking one thing, and that's of course to make sure that your controls are correct, because if they're not set correct, then it will, let's say, end up in a drama, right? As we all know, the configuration for Flight Simulator 2024 and especially the controls is something which is not that easy. So I configured it for, in this case, for the my joystick, right, the Velocity 1. I reconfigured it completely, both the yoke and the quadrant, but I can see it's now correct. So let me hit escape, and then we're good to go. So before we take off, one quick thing which I want to show you, and that's the flight plan. And to show you the flight plan, I need to zoom into this part. I'll not take too long, of course. And there you will see that in this case there are altitudes. Those were the altitudes which I referred to for the VNAV mode, right? So that's something we're going to use pretty soon. But first we need to make sure that we're set up everything correctly. So normally you would do this, I would say, prior to the takeoff, right? Also, I would say while you're probably at the gate or at the parking spot. We will set the altitude, so not to 5,000. We will press this button. So it's set to the, I would say, heading, but in this case you can also consider to already directly set it to the, I would say, arrow, which is also, by the way, shown in the air. Keep in mind that in this case you could, say, decide to change it directly, but in normal case you wouldn't do it, because that will result in that the aircraft will directly start turning in a way, I would say, probably way too aggressive, which is of course not what we want. So here we are, we're at the airport, and let's take off, right? So let's, I would say, full throttle, and let's take off and see what we're gonna do. I see questions coming in, so I will have a look at it once we're airborne, because I need to keep my eyes on the screen, because else things will go, I would say, of course, the incorrect direction, and that's of course not what we want. So we're airborne, a little bit, let's say, turning. So one of the things, of course, is, okay, hey, when do you want to enable the autopilot? So based on the, let's say, manual and information I found, the recommendation is not to switch on the autopilot, let's say, below 400 feet. So keep that in mind, that you likely want to, let's say, increase your altitude so that you're on 400 feet, and then I would say start doing your stuff. So I'm gonna zoom in again. So we're now above 400 feet, so I'm going to enable the AP mode. The AP mode simply activates the autopilot, and I'm going to press the FLC mode, and in that case it will simply make sure that I'm going to fly into that specific altitude, right? So I'm climbing, as you can see, while maintaining the speed. The speed is a little bit low, so what you could do is first make speed and then turn on the FLC mode. That's what I would normally do. So let's switch on the heading mode, right? The heading mode, I'm going to switch it on, and directly you can see multiple things happening. So first of all, the AP from the autopilot is now active. The FLC mode is set to 55 knots, and the heading mode is set to, in this case, 257. So what you will see initially is that the aircraft will start waving a bit. I do think that this is an issue in Flight Simulator 2024, to be honest. But I would say it's doable. Eventually it will stabilize and then everything should be good. So now we're flying using the manual heading mode, but the nightmare about the heading mode is that you need to continuously adjust it, right? Because as soon as we arrive at the next beacon, we need to make changes. And that's where that nav mode comes into handy. So if we press the nav mode, you will see that it directly switches to GPS. In some cases, it will not directly switch to GPS and it will stay on the nav mode because you're too far away from the path. So keep that in mind, that you will look at the path which you configured. If you're close enough to that pink line, which is showing you the route which you configured. If it doesn't pick it up, go closer to that pink line and eventually you will see up that the GPS will take it over and then the GPS will start turning green. In the other end, right, we're still climbing, but there's still a very low speed. So let's move to a different mode. So we're gonna switch to the VS mode, the vertical speed mode, which is now set to 700 feet per minute. And you can change that by pressing this button, right? You can see that I'm not changing it to 400 feet per minute. And this is how you can change the rate of climbing, which you of course can change. You can see still that the aircraft is waving around. And that's something I observed in Flight Simulator 2024, that the autopilot, I would say, likely requires some more work before it stabilizes, because this is, I would say, not of course what we want. So besides that, let's also move the flaps up and let's also start increasing the speed, which also likely will help a bit. So I see some questions in the chat. So welcome Asak and Nuntio. So hey, Asak asked, hey, the same buttons are on the right panel. Does it matter on which side we configure it? No, they should exactly be the same. So if we would move over here, we can see that if I would now change the mode to a different mode, it will directly change. So for example, if I change the altitude with 100, you can see the value changing here directly. So there's no change, they're all the same. Simply is, okay, hey, this allows you to concentrate on flying while the autopilot configures the autopilot for you. The co-pilot configures the autopilot, of course. And that's it, right? So nothing more, nothing less. So that's it. So we can hide the flight plan also. And I see another question. Okay, Voyager Sim Project. Hi from Messina, Sicily, and from Voyager Sim Project. Good flight. Thanks, Nunzio. Also, thanks for creating the great content. Looking forward for your content to be available in Flight Simulator 2024. I watched it and it looks really cool. So let's hope it will be soon ported to Flight Simulator 2024. As you can see, the climb rate is kind of, say, adjusting a bit, right? It's, say, going up and down a bit, but it still goes pretty well, right? And we're climbing with, I would say, speed which is a little bit too fast. But hey, it doesn't matter in this case. So what will happen soonish is, if we would hide the flight plan, or if we look at the flight plan here, is that we're gonna arrive at a certain, let's say, point where we want to use the vertical navigation mode. The advantage of the vertical navigation mode is that it allows you to descend but also climb to a certain altitude. So in this case, we're gonna descend to, I'd say, in this case, 2000 feet. There are a few things which are super important. The first thing is that if you look at this, you can see that you have the top of descent, which is, I would say, we reached the top of descent at 23 minutes, right? I'm going to speed up, of course, the, I would say, rate, the sim rate, because I would say else it will take ages. And then based on that, the target vertical speed will be minus 589 feet per minute with a degree of 3 degrees. This is configurable. So what you can do is you can press the VNAV prof, and this one allows you to change the configuration, right? So if I hide the yoke here, because it's, let's see, a little bit, you can use this, let's say, button, right, to make changes. However, normally you should be able to make changes. So that's something which I would say you can do, but it's not, I would say, recommended to do. I would say I would leave it as is, to be honest. But if you want, you can change it the way you want. And let me find the button also for that, because I thought it was this one. No. well, we will figure that out soonish. So this is how this works, right? So I would say in this case, you can see that the VS requested is not, I would say, available yet. But the sooner we're coming to this nice beacon, the closer it will be. And if you look very closely, which it might be a little bit hard to see, you can already see TOD, which stands for top of descent, and that's where we need to go to. So normally when flying, this will take, of course, a lot of time. And that's, of course, what we want to prevent, right? So short recap of which modes we already discussed. We discussed the autopilot engage disengage mode. We discussed the heading mode, which you can configure to fly in a certain direction based on this button. And this button again, right? It is the blue marker over here, which points into the direction where you want to fly. If you want to, say, sync it with the current heading, you can press your left mouse and then right click mouse, and then it will adjust it automatically. In addition to that, we looked at the navigation mode, and the navigation mode is using the GPS, right? So it's using the GPS information to fly. Advantage of using this one, if you have a long flight path, it will simply go to the next beacon, and after that go to the next one, go to the next one. And that really, say, makes it easier, because if you need to change the heading continuously, it becomes a little bit nightmare. There's one remark I want to make about the navigation mode in Flight Simulator 2024, is in Flight Simulator 2020 it was making the turns a little bit nicer, whereas in Flight Simulator 2024 you will see that it will fly, in most cases, passing the navigation beacon, and then needs to make a turn and needs to make a lot of corrections before it's okay again on that route which you configured. Also, we looked at the flight level change mode, which will put the aircraft in a certain, I would say, will make sure that the aircraft will stay at a certain speed, but also will climb to the configured altitude. And if needed, it will reduce the pitch. And we looked at the vertical speed mode, which allows you to configure the, let's say, climb rate or the pitch rate yourself, right? So in this case, it's set to 400 feet per minute, which is, I would say, good. So I'm seeing more and more people joining the channel. Welcome. I hope you like it. I hope you had a nice Christmas. So let's increase the, let's say, rate of simulation. So I'm gonna press a lot of things, and you will see that it will go crazy fast now. Of course, I wouldn't do this normally because, hey, this is Flight Simulator, right? You want to be, I would say, really realistic, and you want to fly the same speed as you would normally do. You would see that the time is decreasing here massively. And that's good. This is really nice. And as we're coming closer, right, so closely to 1 minute, I will decrease the speed again. And then we can look at how we can use the VNAV mode, right, the vertical navigation mode. So we looked at the navigation mode, but not yet at the vertical navigation mode. And the vertical navigation mode is depending on the altitude which you configure, as well as the altitude which is available here. And that's one thing which I want to show you when we're almost entering this one, is that irritating error again. Let me see, because we're coming pretty close now. So let me reduce the simulation speed again. So here we are, we're now, I'd say, almost frozen. So now we need to increase the bit. So what you see is that we're coming very close, right? So 45 seconds, 44. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna show you how to adjust the altitude using this button over here. But again, you can also do it, I would say, using the button over here, right? Left or right, doesn't make, I would say, a lot of difference. And we're coming very close to that Mooney button. So what you then need to do is you need to press that VNAV button. It will set it to VPTH, which is the vertical path. And what you will see, hopefully soonish, is we're entering that point, right? That's in, I would say, 28 seconds. So let me increase the speed a bit. Here we go. There it was, or not yet. No, not yet. So 18 seconds, 17, right? It's counting down because you're seeing that we're coming very close to the top of descent, right? So we're gonna make the tour, and here you can see it just switched to that vertical path. And what it will now do is it will start descending the aircraft, and as you can see, also it will show you the descending rate. So in this case, the descending rate will be, let's say, roughly well, let's have a look here, 660, because you can see that the VS target and the VS requested is almost the same, right? So this is, I would say, pretty cool. So we're now good to go, and we're now descending. Let's reduce the engine speed a bit because we're into the red zone. Likely we were in the red zone already a bit, but hey, that's good. Asak is asking, okay, hey, can multiple autopilot modes work in the same time? Yes, you can, but it really depends. So in this case, the vertical navigation mode and the navigation mode are working at the same time, right? So the lateral vs the say the direction in which we're flying and the altitude, that's something which is configurable in this case. However, you can't, for example, switch on the altitude mode and the VNV mode, right, which is the VNAV mode. In most cases, what you will also see in this case, that the alt select mode, which is the, hey, if we're reaching a specific altitude, it will switch to alt select. That one is disabled currently, and that's why it also shows white, whereas the VPAV is now, I would say, kind of enabled, right? So let me reduce the speed a little bit further. So I hope it answers the question. Also keeping an eye on the engines, because it's suddenly a little bit too silent. There it is again. So one of the things which you sometimes see in a flight plan is that it sets up values like this. If you see that, you need to modify it, and you can do that by activating the flight plan, right? You can do that by pressing the button over here. Let me pressing the button over here, right? So hold it and then say right click. Then you are able to adjust it, and then you will see it blinking. So once you see it blinking, you can use the large knob to move around. In this case, I want to change this value, right? So I want to adjust the value, and you can simply do it by changing the left knob or the small knob, either turn it left or right, and then use the large knob to move the positions, right? So I'm going to move this one to 17, what is it? 98. So probably it's better to move to 1800. And these are normally, I would say, set by the navigation system, right? So navigation system, if you're planning it, there are certain altitude restrictions as well as speed restrictions. And in those cases, you will see that it needs to be updated. Didn't update it. Nice. Now we need to do it again. So let me do it. Changing it. 0. And then 7. 0. 7. So you can see you can use a combination of the large knobs and small knobs to change it. And then once you changed it, you press enter, and then you can see a pencil, and then you simply right click, and then it's updated. So in this case, the altitude has been updated, and you can see that we're coming pretty close to that 2000 feet now, right? So we're doing that. Another question Asak asked, right? Can I use navigation and heading mode together? No, you can only use the navigation mode or the heading mode. It's not, you can't use both of them, because it would, I would say, disturb the aircraft and would bring it to a really bad situation, right? That's not what we want. As you can see, we're descending now, right? We're coming close to that 2,600 feet. And if we look at the VNAV path, we can see that we're, I would say, pretty cool, and we should be there, the top of descent, minus 3 seconds. So that's good, because there will be a next stop of descent, of course, because, hey, this one has been changed to 1,700 feet, and that's what we can use. So we're slowly descending, and that's nice. We're having the GPS, the autopilot, and the path activated. And what we're going to do soonish is, I would say, activate the approach mode, right? Because that's what we want to do. The approach mode will help us, I would say, doing the landing for us a little bit, right? We're going to do the landing eventually ourselves, but hey, let's do it. So you can see that the aircraft starts turning again because, hey, it received a new beacon. So that's good. And you can see that it slowly turns in this case. Well, making sure that we're, say, also keeping in, say, the altitude. And here you saw the change, right? It now changed to Alt-S, which is the Alt Select mode. Then it will change to Alt mode eventually. And that will make sure that we'll stay on this altitude until something needs to happen. And that's something which needs to happen is that we need to decrease the altitude to 1,700 feet. So we're going to use a small knob to change the altitude again. So here we go, 1700 feet. And that's now set correctly. And you can see that the VPAV directly is, would say, shown here, but it's not yet activated. That likely has to do because we don't need to descend right. Because here it says already 2 minutes and 16 seconds or 15. We need to start descending because it's also shown here on the map, right? The top of descent, where you see that. So let me see if I can move a little bit closer. Unfortunately not. But here you can see the top of descent, right? So that's, let's say, pretty nice. So while we're working on that, I can show it another way while I'm talking. Is that I can likely show it using the flight plan. No, I can't show it to you, unfortunately. Can't show it to you. In the past we had the VFR map, but that's gone, right? A lot of people are requesting to come back. But what you will see is that if we're reaching the top of descent, which you can see over here, 1 minute and 29 seconds, it will start descending. And here you can see that it automatically adjusted the, let's say, descending rate, so to 1.5 degrees. So we're not going to decrease that much. However, what you see is that ideally we should be on a lower altitude because, hey, the lower altitude is shown here, right? So this is the altitude we're currently flying, but we need to be at that 1700 feet altitude pretty soonish. So I'm gonna wait for this, right, to fix it. And if this one is fixed, then I will have a look at it. So here you can see that it now already starts picking up information, right? So it says, okay, hey, I'm likely gonna adjust it to another alt, or say a different speed or a different descending rate. But hey, the VPAV is not, I would say, yet activated, right? So keep that in mind. That would say, in this case, it will come very close to this one, likely once it's at 0. And then we can start, let's say, descending, right? So that's really cool. Here you go. It now activated the VPAV mode and it will start descending the aircraft, right? However, if you really want to descend easily and better and not depend on the, I would say, manual configuration, you can use the approach mode. So let's activate this one. So if we activate the approach mode, you will see a few things are changing, right? First of all, it will say localizer because we'll use a localizer on the ground for navigation purposes for both, let's say, the altitude, but also the direction in which we're going to fly. And you can see another one is blinking here, which says GS, which stands for glide slope. So this one will hopefully turn green soonish, because if it turns green soonish, then we'll ensure that it picked up the glide slope, and then we'll use that one for the, I would say, latitude, right? So it will use it for the vertical navigation. So let's see, right, while we're waiting, you can see that this small green cursor comes into very close play. And if it comes very close, if it's in the center, you will likely see that the glide slope, here we go, it will pick it up and it will deactivate the vertical navigation mode. Don't forget to descend or decrease the speed, and also, I would say, put your flaps down, because that's something which the aircraft doesn't do automatically for you, right? That's something which you need to do yourself. And as you can see currently, I would say it has this green marker in the middle, which means that, hey, the glide slope is picked up, the localizer is there, and then we can start descending and also decreasing the speed, and then hopefully land safely. But as mentioned, I would definitely recommend you to use the manual way of landing. I would say in some cases they say the autopilot landing can be used, I would say, in very difficult situations. For example, if the view is really, really bad, then you can use the autopilot, right? But I would do it. I would not do it. The other thing which I want you to be aware of is that if you are gonna change the flaps, and I already did it a while ago, you will see that the aircraft will start, let's say, readjusting, right? It will start to recalibrate. So keep that in mind, that you don't change the flaps too much, because I also would say it won't be able to, let's say, land correctly on the runway. Of course, you can make manual adjustments if you want, but hey, that's not what we want to do. So if you've got any questions, feel free to post them in the live chat, right? Because I'm looking at them on a regular basis. See, the last one is from Asak, so thanks for posting a question. So keep the questions coming. And also let me know if something is not clear so I can explain it to you in a little bit more detail about how to do that. So I also figured out that the game sound is switched off, right? I did switch it off on a specific reason because it sometimes I would say is making too much noise, especially the AC can make a lot of noise, and that's of course what I want to prevent. So we're going good, right? You can see that we're not using the VNAV mode again or anymore. You can still see those errors, live air traffic. Hopefully that will be resolved soonish by Asobo because I think it's really irritating. So let me know if you also hit this issue in your Flight Simulator 2024. Hopefully not, but like based on the forum post and also the, I would say, the other post which I saw in other media, I don't think that I'm the only one. So you can also see that it also makes change to the flight direction, right? So it now readjusts, and I would say we're going pretty cool, right? So we're gonna say bring the flaps to full. And here's what you see what happens, right? If you pull the flaps, of course, or push the flaps completely down, you will see that the aircraft will get more, I would say, more traction in the air. But it also, I would say, results in that the autopilot needs to readjust. So we're coming closely to the 500 feet. So what I would normally do is, if you're coming below 400 feet, you can decrease the autopilot or disable the autopilot, sorry. And also let's make sure that we're not going too fast. So we're gonna decrease throttling a bit. And here we go for the landing with this night aircraft, right? So relatively easy, a lot of nice options as you could see with this Cessna 172 with the G1000 interface, and it gives you a lot of options which you can use. Another reminder, if you're activating the approach mode, it will directly switch the CDI to localizer 1. So keep that also in mind, and that will change. So we're going to reduce speed again, right? So we're coming closely to 200 feet. So which is good. And then of course you can reduce the speed even further if you want. And don't worry about everything, right? So you can see that sometimes makes pretty, I would say, rough, changes. So now I'm going to disable it, right? And I'm going to also reset the view because I want to do the rest myself. Of course, something we forgot is really important, right? We didn't ask ATC for permission to land on this runway, which of course is not a best practice to do in this case, right? Always ask for permission, and you can also see that we're not in the center of the runway. But hey, we've landed on this airport, right? Using the autopilot. So that's pretty nice. So decreasing also the speed a bit so we can directly move away from the runway. So this is the first part, right? The Cessna 172 was not that hard, right? There were a lot of nice options which will make your life a lot easier. This aircraft, of course, doesn't have, for example, the automatic throttling, etc., which is also part of the autopilot. So let's switch to a different aircraft. So we're going to go back to the main menu, and then again main menu, and then we're going to select a different one. So we're going to select free flight again, free flight because that's easier. And then the next aircraft, well, let me know via the comment box which aircraft you want me to try. Shall we go directly for a big one, or should we go for a smaller one, right? Shall we go, for example, for the CG4, or should we go for a bigger one, for example, the A320? Watching the chat. So let's see who wants to look at what. If I don't see anything, then I will choose. So we'll give you a few seconds. Which aircraft should we use? In that case, I will select it. So first we're going to look at the A320, and then after that we can always jump towards, say, another one, right? So we're going to use this one, private charter. I see Asak also agrees. So the A320, that will be the aircraft which you're going to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same flight, right? So same flight. So we're going to load the flight plan. Hopefully it will work, because I think that this airport is not too big. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we can take off using this one. So it might be even better to, say, use another one. Let me have a look at the runway length. Should be doable, right? So let's hit start flight, and there we go. Yeah, I see a cycle. So he says, okay, I'm trying the Cessna first. Yeah, that's also my recommendation. Start small and then move to the bigger ones. So once you know, let's say, the smaller ones, once you know all the basics, then you always can decide to move on to the bigger ones, because the bigger ones are sometimes also a little bit more complicated, but they're also more fun eventually. I will always try to do a mix of both, right? So let me, I would say, let me make sure that everything is set correctly. So before, say, taking off, right, I'm gonna look at the settings menu, because I need to make some changes in some cases. So let me double check the configuration of the yoke and the quadrant in my case, to make sure that it's using the correct ones. Especially the quadrant is really important for this one. It's setting to the 2 engine. That's correct, right? So that's fine. So now, before we go airborne, there are a few things which you need to keep in mind. Is that this one is completely different, right? So the autopilot itself for the Airbus A320 is on the top of the cockpit. And there are multiple options. For example, here we can define the speed, right? And you can change the speed by making the changes by pressing the left mouse button and then turning around the button, which will change it. But you can also set it to managed. In case of managed, what will happen is that it will show this as a dot. And if it shows it as a dot, it will automatically keep in mind the performance settings which you configured for the aircraft. However, in this case, I didn't configure anything, right? So really bad example, but hey, that's it. Now the other one is, of course, the heading mode. So I'm going to press the button over here, and directly it will set it to the heading of the aircraft, right? So in this case, 257, that will be the heading, which is good. And then you also see that there's a difference here, because in the Cessna we need to activate the heading mode, but in this case it already activated the heading mode. So that's also a difference. Now the autopilot itself can be activated using these buttons, right? The AP1, AP2, autopilot 1 and autopilot number 2. The auto throttle functionality is over here. And then this is the button to change the altitude, right? Which you can easily do by changing it. However, you can also press it and then set it to managed mode. In managed mode, again, it will make sure that it will keep in mind the altitude restrictions configured in the flight plan. So this is the VNAV mode for the Airbus, right? So it will keep this in mind. So also be aware of that. Then the expedite mode, I'm not sure where we're going to use it. Don't think that we're going to use it today, but you can use it if you want in the future. And the approach mode is over here. And of course, then we also have the vertical speed indicator, which will show. This is the vertical, the VS in the Cessna is this one in the Airbus, which allows you to, let's say, set, for example, a certain climb rate which you want to fly, right? So, and then you can, let's say, hold the lock, and then you can say, hey, I want to either set it to selected or managed. That again really depends on what you have configured as a flight plan. So let's see if we can get this one airborne, right? Let's make sure that the it's just a wait. So I'm going to skip this for now. Of course, normally you would need to do it, but for now I'm going to skip it. I'm going to look at the flight plan itself to see if it's in. Didn't load it, of course. That's always a nightmare. Second flight plan also. Let me have a look at it. Also not in. So in that case, we're going to simply, let's say, fly with this one and then see what happens, right? Not the best way, right? But hey, let's do it. So resetting the view, increasing the flaps, and then removing the parking brakes, of course. And then let's go airborne, and then I will show you the functions of the Airbus A320. Yeah, we didn't set up the takeoff speed, I know. So normally I would say I wouldn't do this like this, right? So I definitely would recommend you to follow the checklist completely, make sure that everything is set up correctly, because doing it like this could also result in some, I would say, weird situations, which you of course don't want to have while flying this big jet. So here we go, we're gonna go airborne. Gear up. And you can directly see that some things are changing, right? The runway track is configured as well as the VS is set to +1000. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to activate the autopilot. And then we're going to decrease the throttle, because you can see that the in this case the speed has been set to 180, but we're going far too fast. But that's due to the fact that we simply push the throttles too far, because they need to be in a certain mode. I'll show you which mode they need to be in this mode, right? Now you can see that it switches to speed in the green mode, and that has to do with these handles, right? They need to be in that climb position. If they're not in the climb position, I would say then it won't work, and then it would ignore these kind of things completely. So keep that in mind. It will not work in that case. So we're flying to the 5,000 feet, and this of course goes much faster compared to the Cessna. And then we're gonna go to the runway track, right? So the runway track, that simply is the direction which we're gonna fly. In this case, what you will see is of course that we didn't configure anything, right? We didn't configure a destination, we didn't do anything, which is of course a bad practice, I know. So let's assume that we now want to change the altitude to 6,000 feet, right? So let's do it, or to 10,000 feet. So if we do that, you can see that nothing happens. And that has to do, of course, with not activating the altitude mode. So what you can do is you can press this option and then say press it again. And then it will change the view over here to throttle climb and OP climb. OP climb simply means that it will now start to climb until it reaches this destination altitude, and then it will move to that selected altitude mode again, right? So keep that in mind. Also, what you sometimes see is that the speed is not always 100% working correct, at least based on my findings. So let's make sure that we're setting this one correctly. So here we go, and we're going crazy fast, as you can see, up to the 10,000 feet. Now of course there's also another option, and that's to use the vertical speed. So the vertical speed, right, can be done like this. So you can change it, for example, to 500, and then hold the button, press the middle button, and that will switch the mode to vertical speed mode. So in this case, VS plus 500 simply means we're climbing 500 feet per minute, and then it will sometimes take a few seconds before it's being adjusted, right? You can see that it still climbs crazy fast, but you can see also that it now reduces the climb rate, not only because we're I would say reaching that target altitude, but also because we're, let's say, changing this value, right? In the meantime, you can also see that the QNH is pinging, right? So if you see that, then there's a relatively easy solution for that, and that's to put it to standard. And that will, I would say, prevent that it will continue blinking, because it's likely not what you want to see. So while we're airborne, right, we can't do anything yet, because, hey, what we didn't do is set up the flight plan, right? So let's do that. So let's see if we can set up the flight plan. What we're going to do is we're going to set up the flight plan. Let's set it to init, and then we're gonna make sure that we're gonna have the this one open, and we're gonna set to Mike Yankee, Yankee November Hotel. No, Mike Yankee. Come on. Where is it? Mike Yankee, Echo Hotel, and then / Mike Yankee, November. As you can see, we didn't configure anything, right? So bad practice. Please don't comment on it. I know that I didn't do that part right, but that's something which we will discuss in a future video. So now if we go to the flight plan, you can see that the flight plan is set to this one. So what we can do is we can set the arrival, right? So we can, for example, select ILS number 14. And then we can select the vias. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to add... Well, what should we do? I think it was measure, and then that's set correctly, and then hit insert. So now we've done this, you can see that the same restrictions are there, right? So this is good. But we're also going to make sure that this one goes away. And now we have the same, let's say, direction in which we're going to fly, but also you can see that there are altitude restrictions in here. So one thing which is important, because this has flight plan discontinuity, it will likely not use the heading selector, right? So we're gonna check it. No, you can see it doesn't work. And if that doesn't work, you likely need to adjust something in your flight plan. Of course, normally you would program your flight plan already, but in this case, we need to adjust it. So what we're gonna do is to force that the navigation will be activated, is we're gonna set up a direct to, and then we're gonna say, okay, hey, this is the direct to, which is fine. And then it should normally activate this. And what you see what happens, it directly switches to the navigation mode, which is good for us because the navigation mode is the mode in which we want to be. Now, besides that, we can try to say change this mode, right? Change the heading select mode or the altitude select mode, sorry, to managed. And if we're setting it to managed, it will likely, wrong button. It will likely also start decreasing the aircraft. However, in some scenarios that doesn't happen, right? It sometimes doesn't happen because I would say we're too far away, right? Because in this case, hey, we're too far away from this beacon, right? We're going to Majur and then to Muni, and at Muni we need to be at 2,000 feet. So we'll likely need to increase the speed again to make sure that we're and then the sim rate. Let's say speed, right? So we're gonna change it to, for example, by hitting the Alt and the R key and then changing it. But we also need to keep an eye on the on this one, right? Because it's over here. So we can also look here, right? Because it's also over here normally. Alt Romeo, and then hopefully Flight Simulator doesn't crash, because it's really a little bit too silent for me. Oh no, just need to press it a little bit more. I thought it was Alt R, but let me have a quick look, because it doesn't look like it's increasing that much, right? So in this case, I would say we're going good, right? So let me have a look at the... there's no flight plan, of course, here, so we can't look at this one. So we're going good, but hey, I want to change a little bit faster, right? Because this is not what we want to be. To show you how I did it the first time, because it's something I didn't do. So if you go to the controls and go to the keyboard, you can search for rate, and there you will find the sim rate. And you can see Alt R, and then you can see the plus and minus keys. Those will change the simulation rate. And although it's not even configured here, right? So that's something which is, I would say, I wouldn't use it too much because I don't think it's fair to use. But in some cases, like we're currently in, it sometimes makes sense to do it. Right, so let me hit the keys again. And hopefully it will increase. The bad thing is, of course, that you can't really see what the sim rate is. I remember from playing Flight Simulator a very long time ago that you would be able to see it, but in this case you can't see it. And else we simply need to wait, right? It shouldn't take too long, to be honest. for some reason it doesn't pick up the keys, unfortunately. So you have to stay a little bit longer with me because this will take some time, of course, because we need to fly 33 nautical miles before reaching that endpoint or the waypoint, and then we should, let's say, see the aircraft descending. So as mentioned already, in some case that doesn't work and you need to manually intervene, and that's where that vertical navigation mode comes into play, right? So this one, you need to change it. So if you're lucky, you will see that the level in this case is receiving a dot, and the dot simply means that it's managed mode, right? So let me quickly show. If I'm gonna set it to selected mode, you will see I would say in this case that the dot will be removed, but if you're in managed mode, you will see that it will, let's say, have the dot, which also helps you identifying that. While talking about that, we're still, say, 30 nautical miles from the waypoint where we need to be, right? So a little bit longer. So let me have a look at the chats, right? So are there any questions, or are there any other things which you would like to see from this, let's say, autopilot, in this case in the Airbus A320? So if you would compare it, for example, with the Boeing aircrafts, there you will have, I would say, complete different options. For example, there you will have that VNAV mode comparable to the Cessna one, right? Although it works completely different in that case, but that one has the option. The other things, which is, I would say, between brackets, relatively easy compared to the Boeing, is that this one has a localizer capture and the approach mode, which will simply allow you to, say, quickly or easily land using this aircraft, right? Not too hard, but say we can do, of course, one thing to speed up. I'm gonna simply increase the speed of the aircraft, but keep that in mind, right? So for the Boeing, it's different compared to the Airbus. The Airbus, I would say, I think it's, well, not to say make it sound really easy, it's the easiest one. It's easier compared to the, I would say, the Boeing, right? So seeing more and more people joining the channel. So welcome to my channel. Thanks for watching, tuning into this video. We're already 1 hour online. Well, let's say almost 1 hour, because the 5 minutes of the preview video, I don't want to count them. So hope you like it. If you got questions about the autopilot or things which you want to share about your experiences with Flight Simulator 2024 and the autopilot, then please let me know, because I'm really curious. I think it's working, but sometimes there are some improvements needed, because I don't think that it really, I would say is on par with Flight Simulator 2020 yet in most cases. There are some issues still with it, which are not that nice, to be honest, which could cause, I would say, weird things to happen. I even had that I simply pressed the buttons and they didn't work at all. So also keep that in mind, that that could happen to you. Don't trust in the autopilot 100%. You are still the pilot, which is in control of the aircraft. The advantage of using the autopilot, of course, that you can, I would say, have a look around it, right? You can watch the co-pilot and I would say also maybe figure out some other things in the aircraft, right? Because that's what I normally do, is when I'm doing long flights, I also try to figure out, okay, hey, what are all those other buttons meaning? What are they, what can they be used for? And that also helps you, would say, knowing the aircraft a little bit better. Unfortunately, sim rate increasing doesn't help in this case. So if you rewatch this video, you can, of course, skip a bit and then skip to the part where we're going to really do the landing. You can see that the changes are made here, right? We're now to 19.6, so we're below 20 nautical miles from the next beacon, which is good. And then we're going to go to Muni, and Muni has, in this case, has an altitude restriction. So what you will see is that if it has both an altitude and speed restriction, you will see the speed in front of it, and then after that you will see the altitude. So in this case, the TP one had 179 as the speed restriction and 10,000 feet as the altitude restriction. In this case, there are no altitude restrictions, but normally they should be there in the flight plan. However, what I observed is that in Flight Simulator 2020, they are not always adhered, right? So keep in mind that you always can use the plans, right? So maybe that's a good one to show you. Because what we did, of course, is we now created the plan to land on this airport. So let me see, where is the airport? Here, over here, right? So Mike Yankee November November. So let's see if we can find some charts from that that one. This is another one. This is the one we want to know. And then we of course have the maps, and on the maps you can go to the arrivals and then runway 14. So approaches runway 14, and there you will have the this one, right? So we're gonna add it to the clipboard, and then we're gonna have a look at it. In some cases it's a little bit hard to see, so let me increase the screen a bit so you can have a look at it a little bit closer. So this is the let's say this is the aircraft, right? So we're now flying here, and then we should, let's say, almost bound here, and then we should fly to Hinzi. And there is also where you can see all those restrictions on the map, right? You can see the altitude restrictions, but also the speed restrictions. They should normally, I would say, appear over here, if they're applicable, of course. And here we can see the approach, right? So in this case, 2000 at Muni, because if you're not at 2000, it can't pick up the glide slope. And then I would say we need to be at 1700 at the next beacon, and then we're going to descend automatically. So this is how you can, say, easily see that on the map, right? I'm going to go into more details on the map in a later video or in a later live stream if you want. But now, for this live stream, we're going to simply focus on this part, right? So currently, I would say we're coming closer and closer. We're 10 nautical miles, yes, from Majur, as you can see. And then you will see that some things will hopefully start to change. Again, if it doesn't change, then we likely need to make some adjustments manually, because that also happens, right? So don't worry and don't focus too much on the autopilot that it does everything for you. No, you should still be in control. So you're still responsible for flying the aircraft eventually. So what we're going to do is we're going to decrease the speed, let's say soonish, right? You can see that the autopilot and the auto throttle are enabled in this case. You can also activate the autopilot from the second one, because this one has two autopilots, as you can see, which will make it life easier. While we're talking, right, you can see that the speed mode is active, the alt cruise has been activated, so we're flying on certain altitude. And the navigation mode has been activated because we have got a flight plan. So as soon as you configure the flight plan, you will see that it will switch to navigation mode. You can still use the heading mode, right, by simply turning this knob and then setting it to a certain heading. Then you can still use it to use a certain heading, which makes it easier if you want to skip the flight plan. So while we're continuing, right, we're at 4.5. We're pretty stable. Oh, forgot to reduce the flaps. Also bad practice. Reduce the flaps. Will save you some speed, and also will prevent them from being damaged. And that's of course not what we want. You can see that the aircraft starts making some changes. However, it likely it hasn't changed at the altitude, right? So that's something which you need to keep in mind. That if it doesn't do it manually, you need to do it yourself. So it still thinks we're flying to Majur, right? But as you can see, it already started turning the aircraft. And that sometimes is, I would say, a little bit nasty, because if that happens, you might need to make that change yourself, because else it won't work. So we're going here, we're making the turn, and here we can see that we're going to Muni. But as you can see, it didn't adjust the altitude. So what we're going to do is, in this case, put it to 2000 feet. Switch to manage mode, and then let's see what happens. Here you can already see what happens, right? The aircraft starts descending. That's good. It also, of course, will, let's say, directly start to say decreasing. So in this case, what you will see is that it says descending, right? Because it knows that will start the descent here. Answer is good. It will still use the navigation mode. And you can see here that it automatically figures out, okay, hey, what should be the descent rate? So in some case, what you will see is that it will not pick up the descent rate correctly. In that case, you will need to manually adjust it using that vertical speed mode over here. And this is what I meant, right? This is the weirdness of the autopilot. In some cases, things go weird and then you're screwed. In some cases, I would say reactivating. So left click and then right click will resolve the issue. But I've also seen scenarios where it doesn't work. So keep that in mind. If you want to stabilize the descent, it's sometimes better to use the vertical speed mode, if you ask me. So I'm seeing a lot of people, right? So welcome to the channel. Hope you like it. Let me know if you like it, and let me know if you want to see other things, because I'm looking forward to interact with you. Not seeing a lot of activity in the chat yet. Here you can also see on the map now, it has been set to 2000 feet, right? So hey, it says already told, okay, hey, we need to be at that specific altitude. So let's reduce the speed a bit. You can see that the speed mode didn't work, right? Because we didn't set up the performance mode. And if you want to make that work, then what's really important is that you configure this, right? So you need to activate this and set it up 100% correctly to make sure that that works. So if I, for example, put it in here, right, you can see that the managed mode will be there. And then if I try it, you will see that it also changes in a dot. So dot simply means managed mode. Managed mode means that you set up everything correctly. In my case, of course, I didn't do it. I should have done it, of course, as best practice, especially since I'm showing it to you now. But hey, I didn't do it yet. So we're 4.7 nautical miles from the beacon and we're still descending. But I think we will never make it, right? Because we're too high. And this is where I say, okay, hey, in these kind of scenarios, be aware that you likely need to decrease the altitude already prior to reaching the beacon before that one where you need to be at 2000. So what you can do to adjust this is, I would say, change it, right? You can change it to, for example, hey, I want to descend with 1800 feet. Again, not recommended to do, but hey, if you want to do it, you can do it. Change the buttons. Oh, not 5000. That's far too much. So now it should be set to vertical mode. Let's double check. Yeah, now it's set to vertical mode, right? And we're now going down with a crazy fast speed. Of course, not recommended to do, but hey, we need to do something to see if we can reach that 2000 feet. I don't think we're going to make it, to be honest, if you ask me. But hey, let's see how far we come. Again, not a recommended practice this, because also you can see what it does. It will increase the speed of the aircraft massively, and that much that it simply won't be able to, I would say, fix it itself, right? So you will need to, for example, there's always a nice button in some aircraft where you can drop the air brake, for example, and that will decrease the speed. Of course, what you also can do is drop the flaps, but be careful with that, because if you're dropping the flaps, then it will be a haystack. I see Sean Greng also joining. Not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. So Sean, we're looking at the autopilot. So in this case, we're doing the autopilot functionality for the Airbus A320. We already looked at the Cessna 172. And after this one, feel free to drop in an aircraft which you want me to show or want me to have a look at the autopilot specifically. So we can have a look at all of us together to see, okay, how that works. So again, we're going to decrease the altitude, which is correct. So if you need to change the altitude to the 100s, then you need to change this button, and then you can use the large knob over here, because we need to be at 1700 feet at IZQ69, of course. So you can see we're going crazy fast. Again, not recommended to do this in real life, even not in the sim. But hey, we're going to do it right now because we need to be at that certain altitude, because else we won't be able to activate the approach mode, which is of course something I want to show you. So we're going quickly down. 4000, fingers crossed, 1.3 miles. I think we're gonna make it. So in this case, what you can do is you can activate the lock mode, right? The lock mode will put this one to the localizer mode, and that's now activated. You could see it's quickly changing from a nav mode to lock mode, which is a localizer mode, right? So that will change. And besides that, what you can do is activate the approach mode. If you activate approach mode, you will see that the localizer mode will be disabled. In this case, you will see, okay, hey, it's category 3 single, and that we need to activate the ILS view. And quickly show that. That's this button. That's the GS indicator, right? That's the glide slope indicator. And hopefully that will say we can pick up, but I think we're far too high with that. So likely we need to do let's say turn around, and then we'll use that. Because here you can see that from, let's say, direction perspective, we're good, but from altitude perspective, we're far too high. And as you can see, we're gonna definitely miss it. So I'm gonna, I would say, disconnect from it, and then I will do the missed approach, and then we'll try it again, right? So let's do that. So let's switch it to selected mode. And let's give it another try. Right, we're still going good, right? We're decreasing to 1700, no, 2000 feet, sorry. Let me look at the flight plan. So likely we need to, say, try it again. But since we're now on, I would say, better, altitude, likely we are good to go for the second try, right? So let's see how that works. So we're going to fly over the airport. Watch out. Still looks nice. And then we likely, or not likely, then we need to make sure that we're configuring the destination again, right? So arrival up, and then we're going to say ILS number 14. And we're going to set up a via a measure again, and then hit insert, and then we can remove the other ones. Or you can simply hit direct and then hit measure, and then hit measure again. And now it will turn around the aircraft, as you can see, right? So now we're going to make a turn back to the originating, let's say, beacon, and try it again. But hey, we need to wait because we're 2.1 miles nautical miles from measure, so it will take a little bit more time as expected. But I would say I wouldn't want to have do this, right? Because we definitely would say it would go wrong, I would say, because we're going far too fast and far too high. So also something which is good for you to know and good for you to understand is, hey, make sure that you're reducing the speed and altitude, I would say, up front. I would say way up front, because else things will go wrong, like in my case, right? So I'm going to hide the glide slope scope for now. Here we go again. We're going to make a turn, and then we're 0.8 nautical miles, right? So we're not too far from the beacon. What you will see is in some cases that the aircraft will have, let's say, difficulties, right? So in most cases you can switch to the heading mode and then fly a little bit further back and then turn around, because sometimes it will not be able to make that turn fast enough. And now you can see measures are 31 nautical miles from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly a little bit further compared to the IZQ69. And then program the flight directly to IZQ69. So we're not going to do a full, I would say, approach again. And then try to land on the airport, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go from, I can also do that. Let's go to Mooney in this case. That will save some time, right? So that's, yeah, Mooney is a little bit closer, right? So 0.5. Although I don't expect this is to be correct, to be honest. 14. Well, it's a little bit closer. So we're going to fly to that one, and then we're going to make a turn while, let's say, enjoying the nice scenery of Flight Simulator 2024. Let me know if you got any questions, or if you want me to try a different aircraft after this one, because I'm really curious about, okay, what you want to see. So what we did in, let's say, for those who are tuning in later, we looked at the standard, let's say, instruments which are available in the Cessna 172, specifically for the autopilot. Then we did, I would say, kind of a demonstration of how to use it in Flight Simulator 2024. And after that, I would say, based on Asak's question, we jumped to the Airbus A320. It also was my plan to do it already. So thanks, Asak, to, I would say, agree with me on that one. As mentioned already during this live stream, right, for most of the functionalities in the aircrafts, there is some, I would say, overlap. However, for example, if you would compare the Airbus with the Boeing, it will be completely different. So keep that in mind, that the Airbus and the Boeing will have different functionalities. For example, that VNAV mode, right, which you have in the Cessna and the Boeing, where you can manually program it or simply configure it. In the Airbus, you don't really have that option because you only can set it to that managed heading mode and that managed altitude mode. And that's, I would say, is a huge difference, which will make a ton of, let's say, difference when using the autopilot. Eventually, both of them will have the same capabilities, right? You will be able to, say, land the aircraft. You will be able to fly with the aircraft. Landing the aircraft, I would say, it's not always the recommended way to do because you likely want to land the aircraft yourself. Unless, I would say, the weather is that bad that you simply can't use it. About activating the autopilot. Can be done, I would say, above 400 feet. Sometimes they say above 4,000 feet or 1,000 feet. But it really, I would say, depends. I normally do it above 400 feet in Flight Simulator because I'm not a real pilot, right? So I'm also not pretending to be a real pilot. This is just something I found out while playing a lot, but also figuring out a lot while watching things on the internet. So now let's see. So I see more people watching, more people joining. So welcome to this channel, welcome to this live stream where we look at the autopilot functionality within Flight Simulator 2024 from, I would say, the relatively small aircrafts to the bigger ones like this airliner, the Airbus A320. So any preparation, which aircraft we're gonna use after this? Asking the community, asking the people who are watching, which aircraft should we use? Should we have a look at next? See if there's any preferences, or maybe people say, okay, hey, I already know enough, I'm gonna try it myself. Also, of course, you're more than welcome to do it because, hey, I also learned this while trying and playing around with Flight Simulator 2024. I see LNAV Elazar, he mentioned, okay, the 737. Yeah, we're going to have a look at the 737 after this one. So let's have a look at it. But first, we're going to try to see if we can make a successful landing with this one, right? So you can see that the aircraft now starts turning, right? That's due to the fact that it will now fly into the direction of IZQ. So we also need to reduce the altitude again to 1700. So let's do that. And then let's be safe. And then let's use the 300 feet. Let's use the vertical speed to also reduce that, right? To see if we can come closer, because that's of course what we want, right? Let's put it a little bit, let's say further, 500 to be 100% sure. And you can see that you don't need to make any adjustments, right? You can simply change it and then it will start, I would say, descending at that rate. So that's really cool. So also let me know what you like about this live stream or what I can improve, right? Because I'm also here to improve. This is my third live stream. I'm still learning a lot. I would say trying out a lot of new things to improve it. So let me know what you think about it, what I can do better, because I want to make these streams better and also more interesting for all of you. So for those who would say celebrated Christmas, hope you had a nice Christmas time. For those who are new to this channel, welcome to my channel. Again, we're watching the autopilot for Flight Simulator 2024. Latest update for Flight Simulator 2024 was released, I would say, a few days back, right? But it introduced more issues than resolutions, at least that's my opinion. I don't think it was a really good idea to release an update, say, just before Christmas. Yesterday it was also really bad Flight Simulator. It didn't work. I had a lot of issues. I'm not sure how you experienced it, but for me it was not working. I would say on multiple airports, multiple aircrafts were simply not working. So you can see over there the runway is already in sight. So let's do a few things. Let's first hit activate the approach mode. So if we activate the approach mode, you will see that it first will intercept that localizer, right? So that localizer, it can also be intercepted using the localizer button. And then likely, if we're coming very closely, it will start using the glide slope. And that's this one. So we're now good to go, right? So let's also switch on the ILS mode. And let's also make sure that the gear is down, because that's something which you can easily forget, of course, to do. Also, let's drop the flaps a bit. And here you can see a lot of things are happening now, right? So glide slope is activated. You can see that this one, let's say, it needs to make a lot of adjustments, right? Because we're a little bit above the glide slope. And that's also why you see that it starts descending a little bit, I would say, faster compared to normally. Let's also switch on the auto brakes in this case. And we're now automatically, I would say, reducing, right? So we're reducing the altitude. But we're also reducing the speed, because you can see we need to be, or we already, I would say normally you would break the flaps by doing this, because this is the speed which you need to be at the flaps, right? So you can already see that by using the manage mode, it will already start descending the speed massively, which is good. In this case, the category 3 single ILS runway, that's something which you sometimes see, but also do expect in Flight Simulator 2024, you will see other things. Here we go, right? So gears are down, right? That's good. Landing lights, so we don't think we even switched them off, right? So that should be good. And this is an auto landing, right? So I'm not gonna touch anything. So let's see what happens. So in this case, you can see the poppy lights here. Normally, if you are, I'd say, if these two are burning, then you're on the, I would say, optimal glide path. In this case, you can see that we're a little bit above it, and now we're even far above it according to this one. But according to this one, we should be good. So you can see here the direction is good, but also the altitude is good. Put the flaps to full, and you can see that this will now change to land, right? Which means that we're gonna land the aircraft, hopefully pretty soonish. And of course, we didn't ask the HC for air, I would say, to land. But I see other people also didn't ask for it. And here you can see it moves to flare mode, which is good. So we're gonna touch the ground. But as you can see, we're going far too fast, right? That's due to the changes in the flaps. You will see that things are going really haystack. So again, don't make those changes on the last minute, because then you will end at the end of the runway like I did. And then weird things will happen. So that's enough. I won't show you the crash, because I don't think that's, I would say, very useful to show you. So based on the next question, right, from LNAV, let's switch to another aircraft, right? Let's switch to the Boeing 737. So let's switch to it. So 737. So the 737 MAX, business one. I hit escape. So what the first gonna do is put the aircraft, I would say, on the spot, right? So let me put it somewhere. Well, here we go. Let's put it on Orlando Airport, right? Because we're first gonna have a look at all those buttons, because this is completely different compared to the other one. Ramp medium. Ramp medium likely will. Let's see if that works. So we're gonna look at the Boeing 737. The Boeing 737 is completely different compared to the Airbus, which we just had a look at. So keep that in mind. So typing in here, Boeing. So here we are, ready to fly. Yeah. And then the question was, okay, how can we enter the aircraft? I forgot it. How did we do that? Really bad, right? Really bad that I don't know it. I know. Don't complain. So I'm going to do it a different way. So let me do it a different way in this case, because there was a shortcut for it, but I of course forgot that shortcut. So I'm gonna place it on runway. Again, not recommended to do, but hey, since I don't know how to go inside, I need to do it like this, because else I would say it will take too long, right? And I don't want to keep you people waiting for watching this stream. So says departure, start flight, because I'm gonna explain it while we're, let's say, flying, right? So at least I'm going to try to explain it. So the Boeing 737, as mentioned, is different compared to the Airbus, and it has to do with all the different systems which are in the Boeing 737. So keep that in mind, that you will have some other things which you can use in your advantage, which is also really cool. So let's hope that the flight simulator is friendly for us and it loads everything. Because that's really important. I'm not sure how your experience currently is with Flight Simulator, but the last few days were really, say, between brackets, bad, long loading times. Things didn't work as they should, but hopefully it will work now. Because putting on that parking spot went pretty fast. But this one goes a little bit slower than I had expected, of course. And also we will try a different airport. And in some cases, it's just a matter of waiting, right? Because simply, I would say, I do still think that there are some server capacity things which are going on. If you ask me, because I would say, before Christmas, this was working perfectly. I'm not sure if you tried it, but I played Flight Simulator several times, I would say for long periods, and I didn't experience any issues. But the last few days, I think it might be due to that patch. I've seen several issues happening, or long load times like this. So really some things I don't like. We can see some movement here, which is sometimes a good sign, right? Because it simply loads the, I would say, scenery, but also the other things, because the aircraft itself was already cached. But likely it didn't load the scenery 100%. So let's see what happens next. And if this doesn't work, I'm gonna try a different airport, of course. So fingers crossed it will work. So talking to the live stream, White, starting a poll. What's your favorite aircraft? Let me do that. What's your favorite? Let's also put in some other ones, some smaller ones. Cessna. What? So starting the poll as we speak while we're waiting for this to load. Yeah, I see that also some other people reporting some issues with Flight Simulator. Some people say, hey, it works good. Sometimes some people say, hey, started having some more issues with it. So I see people reporting Airbus Beluga as their favorite ones. Yeah, I also like it. A330. Yeah, also interesting one. Yeah, this takes long, my friends. Let's see if we can choose a different airport. Which is hopefully in cache, right? So this afternoon I did have a fly over here, right? At Key West. Also pretty nice airport. Let's see if this one loads faster. Yeah, the Airbus Beluga, right? Really great aircraft, really nice things are happening. Especially indeed those cargo missions are really nice. I really hope that this works, my friends, because if this doesn't work right, we need to end the stream, because I don't want to keep you watching this screen for ages and ages, to be honest. And I was hoping and kept my fingers crossed that this wouldn't happen today. But let's see. Still surprised that it did work, I would say, once we started at the parking spot, right? Unfortunately, due to the fact that I didn't know these, I would say, key combination. Let me look up the key combination while we're talking. And the plane. See some other people recorded videos about it, so that's always good to see, right? So if you don't know how to do it like like in my case, then have a look at the video where people are, say, showing how to do it, because I would say that always is nice, right? So help the community, I would say, by having a look at that. It was relatively easy. Shift and C from Charlie. That would enter the aircraft. Should have known that. This also takes long. In that case, let's try that. Or was it? Let's give a try to Orlando just one more time. And put the aircraft on the spot here, right? So let's see if that works. Because then I at least can explain how it works, right? And then after that, we hopefully can do a flight. Again, fingers crossed, because it looks like that the servers are hammered again, which is not good, of course, because if the servers are hammered again, then I would say we need to, stop this live stream a little bit earlier than expected, because I really want you to I want to really show you something instead of loading at the or looking at the loading screen, which already a lot of people did. I would say during my first live stream, where it also went a nightmare because it didn't work. So it's loading the stuff as we speak. So let's end the poll to see, okay, what's the favorite aircraft? So it's a mix, right? Boeing 737, Air Beluga, those are the two ones which I would say are in between, right? So it's a mix of both. So let me know if you also experience some issues with, let's say, Flight Simulator, right? Because I'm really curious. Also gonna have a look at Discord, right? There's a great Discord group, which I would definitely recommend you to have a look at, because that one, let's say, if you are experiencing issues, that one is really valuable for having a look at, because then you don't have to figure it out yourself. Because in most cases, I would say, the official news from on the Asobo Microsoft site is, would say, not that good, I would say. It always, would say, takes ages before it's being updated. Let me see if people are also reporting issues. Don't see a lot of people reporting issues yet. This is so bad. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you need to miss this, right? Because I really want to show the Boeing 737 because that one is completely different. So let's see. Also not a lot of progress as I can see, right? So we can watch this screen, of course, for ages, but we also need to be realistic. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This is where the technique would say, where the technology is, so to say, preventing us from showing things. So I'm gonna try different things. So if we move to, for example, free flights. Let's put it on Schiphol Airport. Maybe that is less hammered. Although if I see this, then I doubt if it is. You can already see that, I would say, things are really broken, right? Because you can see that, I would say, the content and the scenery is, I would say, you can't even see it. Yeah, use a VPN. Yeah, I don't have a VPN, LNAV, sorry for pronouncing your name correctly, but that is indeed an option, right? So if you're experiencing these kind of issues and you want to bypass them, one of the ways to bypass this is use a VPN server, because then you can use a VPN, set it up to the US, and then you will be connected to the US servers. In my case, I'm connected to the EMEA servers, which are likely overwhelmed now because nothing is working. So hopefully, I would say other people are not experiencing the issue. But in my case, I would say it doesn't work. But for LNAV, it fixed his issue, right? That's good. So likely I need to invest some money in a VPN service, which I would say allows me to use a VPN service in case of, I would say, these things happening. But on the other hand, I would expect that, I would say, both Asobo and Microsoft would fix this issue by adding more server capacity, because this is simply server capacity issues which are now causing this issue. Maybe it's due to the Christmas period, I'm not sure, but hey, this doesn't help. So I'm gonna give it one more try. If this doesn't work, I think we should call it a day in this case, because I don't think it will work then due to the high server load. But then I want to make you a promise, because I still want to show that Boeing 737. So what I will do is, if this doesn't work for now, I will do a new live stream where we're going to continue watching at the other aircrafts. So keep an eye on my channel in that case, because again, it does make sense to let all of you watch this stream for ages and ages while this simply doesn't work. And then likely I will do a live stream, let's say, in different time. Maybe a little bit before the, let's say, a lot of people are starting to play Flight Simulator, maybe somewhere in the afternoon. Maybe next week. Let's have a look at it. Keep an eye on the community of my channel, because I will post an update on that one over there, right? So, because this, let's say, this doesn't work. So with that said, I'm really sorry that we need to end the stream already because this doesn't work, unfortunately. So have a look and have a close look at my community, have a close look at my, I would say, channel, because I will post a new date for a new live stream really soon, likely next week already, to show you the autopilot functionality in the 737 and the other aircrafts. So feel free to post the aircraft which you want to have a look at or want me to have a look at next week. Then I will definitely promise you that I will try or will show them in a new live stream upcoming about the autopilot in Flight Simulator 2024. Want to thank you all for watching and for the interactiveness in this live stream. And I wish you would say, if I don't talk to you anymore before the end of the year, I wish you a happy end of the year. Stay safe, and hopefully I will see you back next week for another live stream.